Welcome one and welcome all to the greatest show of them all, NFC East Mixtape Volume. I don't know at this point in time. You can listen to us wherever you get your NFC East blog podcasts across the SB Nation universe. You can also watch us on the Bleeding Green Nation YouTube channel or the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel. Everybody check out bleedinggreennation.com, bloggingtheboys.com, hogshaven.com, and of course, bigblueview.com. He is Brandon Lee Gowton from Bleeding Green Nation. I am RJ Ochoa from Blogging the Boys. And as the BTB audience knows over the course of the last few days, I'm a little under the weather. So I know I sound that way, but nursing myself and fighting through it because the mixtape rules all. And I had to show up, obviously, for this particular week.
Did the Cowboys losing make you sick?
No. A lot of people like in my family, I was like, I'm sick. And they're like, well, do you know what's going on? I was like, yeah, I know what's going on. We have a 2-year-old and he'll be 2 in a couple of weeks and he's going to school. And it's just like every month we just get sick with something. So I'm feeling a little bit better. We got really sick about a month ago and then it went away. And now I have a sore throat. So not a great thing when you talk for a living, which I partially do. I'm here and we're ready to rock because this is an important mixtape. It's an important time of year for the NFC East.
I agree. And not only because of what happened on Sunday, but also the very massive implications of that game and what it means for the rest of really this season moving forward for mostly the Eagles and the Cowboys in terms of relevance. Although Washington in the mix for the 7th seed, potentially. I don't know how much that really means and matters considering the 7th seed each year pretty much doesn't do anything. And then the Giants are
we've had the 7th seed began in 2021. Actually, the Eagles were the first NFC 7th seed. No, I'm sorry, it was 2020. Excuse me. And the Bears were the first NFC 7th seed.
Yeah.
The Eagles had it.
Wow.
Yeah, the Eagles had it the next year, and last year it was the Seahawks.
Yeah. So none of those teams won,
and
they all got blown out.
None of the AFC 7 seeds have won, although the Dolphins came really close last year against the Bills. But so we have yet to see a 7 seed win a playoff game. Obviously, it will happen at some point in time. Before we get to everything, we haven't done any dilly-dallying. Do we want to actually, I have a question. You're a soup connoisseur, and I mentioned that I have a sore throat. What in BLG's mind is the best soup for when you have a sore throat specifically? Because some soups are great, but maybe they're a little too spicy. Maybe they have something that like kind of hurts your throat. Like, I want you to put yourself in my shoes. I'm not feeling well. My throat is achy. I need some soup to kind of lift my spirits.
Yeah, I wouldn't say so in general, if you're going for enjoyability, I would go with like a creamy soup, baked potato soup. I don't think that's what you really want right now with the throat issue going on. I don't think the cream is really the right thing for that. I think you're looking at more of like a brothy soup. So I think you just have to go with a classic chicken noodle soup. I mean, I think if you're not feeling well, I know it's cliche. I know you don't love that basic kind of thing, but I think it's a tried and true classic in this instance for a reason. It works.
That's well said. I actually think that potato soup sounds kind of nice, although depending on how much cheese you put, I could see it kind of like being overwhelming given how I'm feeling right now. But that's neither here nor there. Let's excuse me. And I'll apologize now for the little bit of coughing I'll do. Let's get to it. The Philadelphia Eagles emerged victorious on Sunday, 28-23.
Easy win for the Eagles.
Do you really feel that way? Do you really feel like
obviously not?
Oh, okay. That's just making sure. So this was my lock of the week for the Cowboys, which missed. I obviously we have a lot to say about this game, but I'll let you go first because the Eagles did win. Your thoughts, and you mentioned the implications of it, and we talked about this a lot, obviously in the lead up. And that was that I think is the biggest bummer of equality for me. Like the biggest bummer quality is what the Cowboys lost out on in a chance to steal this game and the significance it would have provided to them, to the NFC East race, and to have had Philly sit on it for the entire bye week. But nevertheless, Philly gets to go into the bye feeling pretty tall, 8-1. Your thoughts?
The Eagles tried their hardest to give that game away at the end. They almost choked, but in true justice for Kamu Grugier-Hill, who once said the Cowboys are always chokers, Cowboys choked harder at the end. And obviously, game of inches, narrow margin, whatever, doesn't really matter to me because, again, the implications of that win, I don't care how you did it. You had to do it. They did it. It wasn't totally like they just stole the game too. I mean, they were up 28-17, right, at one point. So it wasn't like, oh wow, they totally just got lucky and weren't even good at all. No, I mean, they played well, and then they didn't play well down the end. And again, they almost gave the game away, but they're 8-1 going to the bye week. How many teams out there would you rather trade places with if you're an Eagles fan? Who would you rather be? Would you rather be the Ravens? Okay, sure. They're looking really good. They also lost to Gardner Minshew. They also lost to Kenny Pickett. And their their quarterback in the playoffs has never done anything really good at all. So
okay, relax on the Ravens thing. The Eagles.
But my point is,
Zach
like,
Wilson
who would you rather be? You're like, the Eagles are flawed. Who would you rather be?
The only answer really ever is the Chiefs because they have Patrick Mahomes.
Exactly.
Like that's the only
reigning
answer
Super Bowl champs who have a generational quarterback, maybe the best ever, and one of the very best head coaches, if not the best head coach ever. So okay, that's who you want to trade places with. Sure, fine. And even then, Chiefs offense isn't really looking good lately. So it's not even like they're like perfect and they don't have any flaws.
No, but I mean, but to answer the question, like that's the only one. And I agree with you. And like I agree with you. There's no like apologies for how the win happened because of how significant it is. It gives the Eagles a 2.5 game advantage over the Cowboys now. And even if you do believe that the Eagles are going to skid a little bit when they come out of the bye, when they go to Arrowhead, what is the exact sequence here? It's go to Arrowhead and then come back for Buffalo and stay home for San Francisco, then go to Dallas with the Cowboys coming off the mini bye. By the way, we haven't really mentioned that a lot. And then go to Seattle the week after that. So even if you believe that, be a little bit pessimistic, say they're going to drop 3 of those games, that would be enough to let Dallas, and let's include the Dallas one in that. That would be enough for Dallas to obviously overtake Philly if they don't lose any games between now and then as well. So, I mean, they've given themselves a very wide margin for error, which is what you obviously want.
It's, so much has been made of the fact that the Eagles have this very tough schedule, and they do. It's a gauntlet of teams, even though some of those records probably don't like the Bills are 5-4, but they're still
the Bills, I'm so unafraid of the Bills game for the Cowboys, and like I don't consider that a real opportunity for the Eagles to fall. Like look at the other games that the Eagles are kind of facing. I'm not as hopeful that the Bills can beat the Eagles.
In any case, my point is the Eagles actually have the ninth easiest remaining schedule in terms of strength and schedule because the Arizona Cardinals and the New York Giants are so bad. And to be able to play those 3 teams with 2 of those games in Philly at home, and then the last one is on the road in the finale. But like, do you think Giants fans are even going to show up for that game, week 18? Like in the season, just totally in the gutter and wanting their team to lose probably because they want, potentially the number 1 overall pick. So like, even that one road game is probably going to be a lot of Eagles fans taking over MetLife in that situation. So if they can there's a situation where they go 2-3 in the next 5 and they win out those final 3 games, they're 13-4. Like that's a really, really, really good spot to be. That might be good enough for the 1 seed. Not totally sure. Totally depends on, how things go with Dallas and then the Lions as well, because the Lions have a very favorable schedule here. But if they go 3-2, again, then you're looking at 14-3, and that probably is enough to win, depending again what happens elsewhere. So they're in a really good spot. Last thing I'll say about the game itself, getting off of the looking forward. Going into this matchup on BGN radio, I didn't say it so much here because I know you'd have an issue with it, but like I felt like not only just this season have the Eagles had some bad breaks, they've had some good breaks too, but they've had some bad breaks. It's been a mix, but specifically more so in the Eagles-Cowboys series, there's been a lot of things that just have kind of been like out of the Eagles' control go against them, dating back to really, well, honestly, even before the Dak era, if you want to include that game in 2014 where I forget the kicker. Who was the Cowboys kicker that year? 2014.
It was Dan Bailey.
Dan Bailey. I've never seen this happen in my life. Kicks off the opening kickoff and it bounces back towards the Cowboys. How does a ball bounce back towards the team?
It's an oblong shaped ball, like the physical
but like that never happens. That happens on punts because it's a different kind of kick. Anyway, point being, like, okay, you have that. Then in the Dak era, Leotis McKelvin drops a pick. That is like a sure pick from Dak late in that game in 2016. Okay, whatever. Eagles, Cowboys go to overtime. Cowboys win the coin toss. Cowboys win the coin toss again when the Eagles and Cowboys go to overtime in 2018. Like, that's just luck. The Cowboys took advantage of it, to be clear, but I'm saying, like, the Eagles had this thing that had no control over, like, go against them. Same thing at the end of that game where Rasul Douglas, like, almost picks off Dak. At the very least, it's a 3rd down deflection on 3rd and 8. Somehow turns into a touchdown for Amari Cooper because the ball bounces off of Rasul Douglas's hands. Wasn't a good pass. into Amari Cooper's hands for the game-winning
By
touchdown.
the way, Amari Cooper had a touchdown just like that this week, incidentally, for Cleveland. But yeah,
don't interrupt me, I'm not done yet.
Sorry.
Same game is the no clear recovery game, where that's just like an insane ruling where the Eagles totally recovered that ball. Like, my point being, last year when the Eagles, and I was so upset that the Eagles lost this game because I felt like they played like the better team, but they lost in Dallas. Miles Sanders fumbles, Cowboys recover that one. Hassan Reddick strip sacks Dak Prescott to ultimately set up that 3rd and 30, which the Cowboys convert. But like, that's the same kind of thing where Eagles could have recovered that. They had bad fumble luck, my point is, in that game. Eagles had good fumble luck in this game. So some of these things are going to even out over time. That's why I don't feel like, oh, the Eagles totally just got all the breaks. And once again, that's not true. It's not once again. They got it for once. It was due. I genuinely felt like going into this game, the Eagles were due for some good luck in this series, and they got it. So good for them.
My thoughts on the game are, I mean, I don't think it's like a negative to say that the Eagles benefited from luck, if you want to call it that, but they did. Like, I mean, you're talking, and that was a point that I was. No, but that was the point I was upset about. Was Jalen Hurts had 11 turnovers on the season entering this game. The Eagles offense had 13, and you don't force a single one. And you know, I'm not. I don't want to say I'm like leading this brigade, but it's kind of a thing for me on our post-game show to kind of bring up like, how come nobody wants to talk about Dan Quinn? Like, and I'm not saying that there's
that's always your main takeaway after.
I know, but like, do you know how many turnovers the Cowboys have forced in their 3 losses? The Arizona game, the San Francisco game, and obviously the Philly game.
0.
1. And it was when Christian McCaffrey ran over Jordan Lewis.
I don't know if you
recall that.
It was a weird
play. Like fumbled into his arms. And so like we could sit here, we can, you know, place blame on different, you know, people associated with the Cowboys, but it's like, okay, Dan Quinn, you're supposed to be this like alpha dog. Like your group, you're a big mighty group who we properly throw all the flowers at, can't generate takeaways in these big games or whatever. And like, you couldn't have said this about the Niners or the Cardinals, whatever, but like the Eagles were literally turnover prone. Like they had 13 turnovers in the previous 8 games. I mean, like, that's a lot. And you couldn't and I understand that you like, I tweeted that out. People are like, well, they did force 3 fumbles. It's like, well, yeah, but dude, you got to find a way. Like you simply have to.
They didn't even force 3. They were 3 happened.
Right.
So they didn't force the last one. The Eagles forced that one. Let me tell you that. My thing on the turnovers, though, and I went to say this during the NFC East Mixtape live episode that we did, which shout out to everyone for tuning in, giving good feedback on that. We'll certainly do another one of those for the Eagles-Cowboys game in Dallas in a few weeks here. My point on that, though, was like, if the Eagles were taking the ball away like they were last year, it was like they're really relying on this turnover thing, everyone would be talking about that. Like, this isn't sustainable. They're doing it. So, but then that has to work the opposite way a little bit then when it's like they're leading the league in this, because it's like, hey, maybe that's what I'm talking about when they've been unlucky at points this year. Again, maybe they were due for some level of positive regression there where they weren't going to be quite as bad as turning the ball over. And now I say that, but they almost did. So maybe not.
Well, I give Hurts credit for that. Say that. Like that's like, you know, some of it, like a lot of it's on Dan Quinn and the Cowboys defense, but a lot of it is on Jalen Hurts, like locking down and not turning the ball over, right? Like,
he didn't throw any passes that were like interceptable, right? To be clear, like these were fumble things, which happens, but there wasn't any like, oh wow, like 5 drop picks or anything.
Exactly. So multiple things can be true there. So one for me was the turnover thing. Like, Dan Quinn, your group's got to be better. Like, if you want us to talk about you the way that you get talked about and you want to avoid criticism the way that you do, you have to find a way to impact the game in big games like this. There's a lot of people, a lot of Cowboys fans complaining about the officiating. I think it's lame when anybody complains about the officiating. I'm well on record about this, like whoever the teams are. So was it poorly officiated? Yes, but I feel that way in general. Like, there were 10 penalties on each team. Like, I hate officials just becoming a part of the game, like whether it's impacting my favorite team or not. On the Cowboys side of things, like the Stephon Gilmore pass interference, I found that to be a bit questionable. A lot of people had a lot to say about the Luke Schoonmaker non-touchdown. The most logical argument I can hear on this is, and I know it's like kind of come about, is that he hadn't completed the process of the catch when his knee was initially down. I get that, but I think you lose that review because that particular catch was way too difficult to discern. Like, when he fully established possession. I understand that Reed Blankenship hit him early. I don't know that anybody can dispute that.
I mean, that's like one of those things, though, that's like you see it on replay like live.
No, I know, but I mean,
like it's a
it did
bang bang
happen.
play live. It's a
That's
bang
all
bang
I'm
play
saying.
live
Like,
that we don't need that to be called every single time. Like it wasn't egregiously early. A little early, yeah, and which is more apparent on replay than it is
was
in live.
objectively early though. That's all I'm saying. But like,
Sure.
I fault the official for missing that more than I fault the officials for not considering that he didn't have possession until he was further in the end zone or whatever. That's too difficult with the way that the catch happened to happen. It was way too difficult to discern in the moment. The Dak Prescott stepping out of bounds thing, that was super unfortunate. There's a lot of people killing Dak for not finding Brandon Cooks on the Schoonmaker play. He was open on the right side of the field, but I think it was Hassan Reddick who was like right in his face. Like there would have been just no chance in the world for Dak to get back to that side of the field. He had to get the ball out. For me, and I've tweeted about this, I wrote about it in my stock report, I've said it many times. The true inflection point for me was the Michael Gallup drop. I don't know if you saw me say this anywhere. The Michael Gallup drop on the final Cowboys possession of the first half. At that point, the Cowboys had scored touchdowns on their previous two possessions. It was a 3rd and 3, and Dak hits Michael Gallup for the easiest first down conversion in the world. Gallup drops it. The Cowboys have to settle for a field goal, which Brandon Aubrey makes.
Well, they don't have to settle for a field goal. That's
I mean,
the thing.
no, like you're right. I mean, and I don't fault them for kicking that.
Hold on, let me jump in here. That's very relevant there, and I think this is why I like Nick Sirianni over Mike McCarthy, because guess who went for it on 4th and 3 from what was it? The 26? No, 27 on that Cowboys on the first Eagles drive that they had. 4th and 3, Dallas 27, Eagles go for it. 4th and 3, Eagles 33, so only 6 yards back. Mike McCarthy decides to go for a field goal. If I say this, I've said this before, you have to look at these decisions like, what would the other team want you to do? The Eagles were begging the Cowboys to kick a field goal there because they couldn't stop them. They were getting the Cowboys in the middle of the field was wide open. That is on McCarthy. He was a coward there. He was not giving the Cowboys an edge. And that is very much on him. That is not a good decision by him.
I disagree. I think you're looking at it in a vacuum.
Wait, one last thing. Sorry. The context there is that the Eagles are getting the ball back with plenty of time to potentially get a field goal of their own. They didn't, but they had the ball on their own 25 with like 1:25 on the clock and 3 timeouts to work with. So they had plenty of time to score still in that first half. And the Eagles were getting the ball back to begin the second half. So that's like a spot there. I feel like you especially need to go for it and make sure that you're going up a touchdown there.
I think you're looking at it too much in a vacuum because Nick Sirianni punted.
Gave you more context for it.
No, but Nick Sirianni punted on 4th and 3 to give the Cowboys the ball with the chance to go take the lead at the end of the game. So like if you want to play the game,
they were on their own territory though.
I know, but
they weren't in plus territory.
He went for it though early in the game, the very first possession of the game in his own territory.
In plus territory, not negative territory.
No, the first possession was.
That was 4th and 1. Yeah, that was not.
No, but that's what I'm saying. So, like, if you're playing the game, like, what does the other team want you to do? Of course, the Cowboys want you to punt from 4th and 3. And I thought it was super interesting. I want to get back to the Michael Gallup thing, but that on 3rd and 3, that the Eagles ran this play that was just like this deep shot at AJ Brown, because I know you were at the game, and I don't know if you've watched the broadcast, but Greg Olsen was like, okay, this is what the Eagles are going to do. They're going to run this ball and make this 3rd and 3 much shorter so they can push this on 4th and short, whatever. And they didn't. And that was a really risky call. And I don't mind the aggression at all. But I mean, again, I think you're being too harsh on McCarthy to fault him for taking points at the end of the first half. Now, the Michael Gallup thing, that's on him, man. Like, you can't, like, it's just the easiest pass in the world. You have to catch that. And obviously, I'm adding some ifs and some ands and some buts, but like I think the Cowboys probably go down and score a touchdown. They were moving offensively at that point in time, and if they do, you're talking about 4 more points that obviously would have been critical in a game that you lost by 5. At the very end, you need a field goal to win or whatever. I mean, and so that drop I think is the true like break point of what happened. Cool Brandon Aubrey got his record or whatever, but that was the most critical moment I think of the game. Like looking back in hindsight for Dallas. And ultimately, though, the Gallup drop, the Schoonmaker play, Dak stepping out of bounds, not recovering the fumbles, you can't do all of those things against a team this good and expect to win. And to be very clear, though, you did get gifted a chance at the very end to steal this game. And I think you would agree on 1st and goal at the 6, it felt like they were going to. And then the false start happens, and then the sack, and it just obviously all snowballed from there. Terrence Steele is taking a lot of heat from Cowboys fans, rightly so. That contract looks really poor. I mean, and like the rivalry of it all really doesn't bother me that much. Like it sucks. Like, you know, I would much rather lose this way to like literally anybody else. But what really bothers me is the value of the game and the impact of it and the significance of it. And I think I feel a way that you felt after the Christmas Eve game last year. I feel like in some ways, not always, but in some ways, Dallas played the better game. I think that Dak was the better quarterback. That's not a criticism of Hurts. He didn't have to do a lot of things. And I think the things he had to do, he was excellent at. But Dak,
especially given the context of like he couldn't even. It's incredible. Sure. He stayed in the game after like he couldn't even like he could barely get up after taking that shot to the knee.
Totally. I mean, so to debatably have had the better performance, to debatably have had the better quarterback play, to have been better in X, Y, and Z, and to lose is just frustrating. And especially lose a game that would have swung the your odds at winning the division and subsequently being the number 1 seed in the NFC. That's a tough pill to swallow. I think this played out the way like we all said like before the season. These teams probably split the series. You know what I mean? Philly probably wins in Philly. Dallas probably wins in Arlington. It played out that way. It was a great football game, and it's a bummer that my team lost, and I'm pissed off about that. It's probably a game of the year so far in the NFL, and it was a classic. It was really great. And the impact is really, really significant in terms of the ripple effect. I don't believe in moral victories. But unlike, and I think this perspective is important, after the Cowboys lost to San Francisco, I mean, you and I talked about it, like it felt like over. Like it felt like this team had nothing to possibly build upon. Like they had been destroyed. Versus we've seen this offense since that game grow substantially, grow significantly. CeeDee Lamb has really just kind of, not just in this game, but in the 3 since the San Francisco loss, evolved. Dak Prescott has really kind of taken things into a different direction. There are still some problems that people have. Brandon Cooks' utilization. Tony Pollard's not living up to anything. But I feel much better about this team. This is probably the best I felt about them all season long, despite the fact that they just lost.
On the Terrence Steele thing, obviously I do agree with you in terms of like he's not working out for the Cowboys. Also, just credit to Josh. I mean, he got beat by like a very good player right now. Can you tell me the two?
He's getting worked by a lot of people. Like not to take away from Josh,
but it was such a critical spot. And for Josh, and well, who are the two players in the NFL right now who lead the league in pressures generated? Do you know them?
I don't, obviously. But I'm going to assume Josh Sweat is one of them.
It's Josh Sweat and Micah Parsons. So Josh Sweat is having like an elite, kind of year here. Like he's been very excellent. So in addition to Terrence still being bad, I mean, credit to, Josh Sweat coming up huge in a huge spot. And the Eagles pass rush consistently has been clutch this year. Usually it's been Hassan Reddick who's closed things out. But interestingly enough, the Eagles actually flipped Reddick and Josh Sweat on that play where Reddick usually would be lining up against Steele. This time he was against Tyron Smith. And Reddick didn't get the sack on that play, but he also did make Dak Connelly drop his eyes a little bit there. If you look at that replay going up against Tyron Smith, Reddick kind of like wins enough where Dak gets uncomfortable and kind of moves off his spot a little bit. And that gives like Josh Sweat just enough time to get to him there. So Eagles pass rush has been clutch. Like that's the part of it where that wasn't just like luck. Like that part was deserved. Their pass rush, which they heavily invest in, like came through for them at the end, which is basically their only chance of playing defense, it seems, because they can't cover anyone a lick right now. Going back to the standings of it all, looking at where the Eagles and Cowboys rank here, like this win was so valuable for the tiebreaker scenarios because assuming, let's say there's no more trip ups in the division for either team other than the Eagles lose to the Cowboys. Let's say that happens. Then they're both probably going to be 5-1, right? Let's say the Cowboys
within the division. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say the Cowboys beat the Giants this week, which I think is like the lock.
I don't know if you've seen, they opened as 15.5 point favorites.
Yeah. And they're up to 16. I saw that. Yeah. I actually already put a wager on that because it's like, I know the odds aren't great, but I'm like, the Cowboys are going to win this game. Anyway, on the money line, by the way, not the spread. Okay, so let's say they're both probably going to be 5-1 in the division, right? I'm giving you guys haven't played the Commanders, right?
No.
I mean, it's possible they trip up, but I'm not going to say they do. I'm going to say the Cowboys win both of those games. Eagles and Cowboys both 5-1. So that tiebreaker, so the head-to-head is even, and then the division is even. Then it goes down to common games. It's not conference record when it comes to in the division. It's common games. And the Cowboys lost to the Cardinals. So that's a big
The
deal.
Eagles lost to the Jets.
That's true, but the Cowboys also lost to the 49ers. So the Eagles have an opportunity there. And we'll see, how these other games go in terms of what, like the Seahawks and the Bills. So there's other games, for there to determine this. But certainly, the Cowboys losing to the Cardinals or the Eagles losing to the Jets, depending on how you want to look on it, that kind of cancels it out. Going back to the conference part of it all and kind of removing the Eagles part here, let's say we're just looking at how the Cowboys stack up in the conference. I mean, it's tough because Dallas is 2-3 now in the conference, and a lot of the other teams like around them, the Seahawks are 4-1, the Vikings are 5-2.
Oh, now you believe in the Vikings.
Niners have the tiebreaker over the Cowboys currently, and they're 4-1. Lions are 4-1. So, a lot of these teams are currently, and things can change, but have that advantage over the Cowboys. So that's kind of quietly working against them.
So play this game with me from the Cowboys' perspective. They're 5-3. You bet on them beating the Giants. They're 6-3 at Carolina Sunday before Thanksgiving. 7-3, and then Washington you had them beating. So they're 8-3 after Thanksgiving. Right. A low-key important game because everyone's looking forward, obviously, to the Philly rematch, which in the kind of mock, right now have the Cowboys winning. But the game before that, Dallas plays the Seahawks at home, which could be essential if Dallas doesn't wind up winning the division. Because as it stands right now, Seattle is the 5 seed in the NFC, and we're only halfway through, but Seattle's the 5 seed and Dallas is the 6 seed. And so losing to Seattle would really make hurdling them in the wild card standings really, really difficult. And that's significant because whoever's the 5 seed will likely visit the NFC South winner, whoever that winds up being, which Dallas did obviously last year. But if you can't get the first round bye, I think you want to be the 5 seed in the NFC.
Easily.
Literally between.
Who are you afraid of in the NFC South?
That's what I'm saying. If you can't be the 1 seed and you can be seeds 2 through 7 in the NFC, I think there's an argument to be made that 5 is the best position for the wild card round. So you have to beat Seattle in that sense. You don't have to worry about beating Detroit as it relates to the wild card standings because they're going to win the NFC North. But I wanted to get to this point. It's very possible. So hang on.
Sneaking up.
So hear me out. So we've got Dallas at 8-3 through Thanksgiving. Then Seattle, you had them beating Philly, so that's at least 9 wins. At Buffalo, at Miami, say they split those, that's 10. Say they have about 10, 11 wins, and they're hosting the Lions in week 17. I think it's possible that at that point, Dallas is potentially out of the NFC East race, and it's Detroit and Philly going neck and neck for the 1 seed.
It could be. There could be a scenario where the Eagles are rooting for
I wonder
the Cowboys.
That's what I'm saying. I wonder if it's worth not throwing the game, but worth hey, let's lose to the Lions and let's help them get the 1 seed because we're going to be locked into the 5 seed no matter what. We can't win the division. So I do think that's an interesting storyline as we get closer to December.
That's a fair point by you. I actually wrote about that in my NFL playoff picture. Eagles outlook after this game. I this is the sentence I wrote. There's a Cowboys Lions game in week 17 that could potentially see Dallas inadvertently helping the Birds get the top spot in the conference.
So again, Dallas is sitting on 5 wins at the moment. We have them at 8 through Thanksgiving. Let's say they split the Birds, the Seahawks Eagles games, because we both had them beating the Eagles at home, so that would be 9. I have them splitting the AFC East games on the road, the Bills and the Dolphins. So they're at 10 wins. So again, and maybe even 11. That's possible. So 10, 11 wins versus the Eagles, who are currently at 8. I think it's fair to say that between Kansas City, Buffalo, and San Francisco, I'm willing to give them at least 1.
Especially because 2 of those games are at home.
Right. I'm willing to give them at least 1, but probably 2. I mean, maybe, but still, let's be a little conservative and say, let's say 1. Say they win 1 of their next.
I think you can say they win 2 out of their next 5 at least. I think that's fair. That's conservative, and I think that's fair.
The next 5 are at Kansas City, Buffalo, San Francisco, at Dallas, at Seattle. So that puts them at 10 wins entering week 16. And then the Giants would be 11 wins. So they would have 11 wins. Dallas would have 10 entering that week 17 when Dallas hosts Detroit. And presumably Dallas would have beaten Philly. So would have caught up theoretically. That could be that Cowboys Lions game could be a massive, seed shaking game if Dallas catches Philly, if Philly puts more distance, whatever. it could be that has potential to have the most implications across the NFC playoff picture.
And that's obviously, again, we're just assuming the Eagles lose to the Cowboys. I think it's possible that the Eagles play a better game next time they play against the Cowboys.
Even if Philly lose or beats the Cowboys, that adds to that perpetuates the point, right? Like that adds to maybe there is incentive to lose to Detroit or whatever.
So then it's good for the Eagles to lose to the Cowboys, actually. So then the Cowboys are actually, I don't know. It's a little.
For the audience's sake, we're not trying to get too far into the weeds here, but these are all important things that you have to start considering when you get to this time of year.
Sorry to interrupt, but yeah, 100%. Like this is more than just like this game was more than just one game. Like this is like the ramifications here are huge. Like look at the Eagles' playoff percentages right now. According to the New York Times playoff simulator, that above 99% chance to make the playoffs. Obviously,
what are Dallas's at, by the way?
I don't have those up in front of me. I can pull those up, but they're at 88% to win the division. They're at 66% to get a first round bye, and they're at 19%, I guess, to make the Super Bowl. So obviously, take those for what they're worth. Things can change, but like that's an incredibly good spot to be in entering your bye in week 10.
I'm looking for the simulator right now.
The Eagles have also never started 8-1 and not gone to the final game of the season previously.
I saw a tweet from Jory Epstein, who friend of Blog of the Boys. I'm probably gonna get this wrong, but it was something like the Eagles are like not a lot of teams have won at least 8 of their first 9 games in consecutive seasons, and every team that has won the Super Bowl in the second season. I'm butchering that, but again,
I can give you some stats if you want some stats.
Well, I mean, I think we've said enough, and we have to. There's a lot of NFC East news to get to. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So here's the Eagles' 8-1 starts, and I think this is relevant for context. It doesn't mean they're definitely going to get there, but okay. So here are the previous 6 8-1 starts. 1949 won the NFL championship. 1960 won the NFL championship. 1980 lost the Super Bowl. 2004 lost the Super Bowl. 2017 won the Super Bowl. 2022 lost the Super Bowl. So also I want to note quickly here, because there seems to be like some negativity coming off of, they're like, this 8-1 Eagles team isn't even any good. And I get that it hasn't always been fun as much as you wanted it to be. Eagles have literally either held or shared the top record in the league every week since the beginning of last season. So they chill out a little bit.
They feel like
what more do you want?
They feel like a less intimidating version of themselves with respect to last year. You know what I mean?
And that's fine. Okay. And even so, they're still the best team in the league, or one of them.
No, that's all we're measuring it against. But like I've said before, like the fact that they're 8-1 despite like the turnovers and the inconsistency and like the offensive like problems or whatever, like they and that's what this game kind of came down to. And I said this on our post-game show, like I do believe the Cowboys probably played the better game. Like you can define that however you'd like. I think that Dak Prescott was the better, had the better quarterback performance in the game. But generally every NFL game comes down to a handful of moments, and the Eagles have perfected winning those moments, like whatever they wind up being. But the Eagles have a tendency to capture those moments, and that's really all that matters. And by the way, I didn't want to get out of here without giving credit to my guy, Nick Sirianni. A lot of people I saw were getting on him for challenging the 4th down sneak that Dak Prescott had.
Who's a lot of people? Because I don't think that's really so much here.
I mean, I just saw it on the internet. I just saw it on, like on Twitter at the time. The upside of that is so big.
Right.
Like
exactly.
And like the cost is so, now I recognize that at the end with the injuries that were happening on the final possession, you're thinking like, oh man, I would have loved that timeout, obviously. And that wound up being the like 1 out of 100 times that it could come back to burn you. But like the upside there is so, and that's where I have to give Nick Sirianni a lot of credit. It isn't just aggression. He has identified the areas that are worth maximizing the potential return on investment.
Yeah, and also maybe you just like wanted a timeout there to settle the team down a little bit anyway, because Kevin Byard had just like gotten a penalty. Things were getting a little bit heated. So at the very least, it's like, hey, maybe you wanted a timeout there to kind of just like, we weren't going to call a flat out timeout, but point being, like, you're okay with a stoppage here. Like, okay, I might lose this challenge, but I'm okay with kind of like letting the defense chill out for a little bit here. Also, Sirianni he was pissed before that play even happened. I didn't see the broadcast, of this part, but it seemed like they reset the play clock there when they shouldn't have. At least that's what I heard. I didn't see it, so I can't speak to that. But he was like furious before that sneak because apparently he thought they reset the play clock when they shouldn't have. But whatever. So I think, but part of that actually I think went into part of the reason why he challenged, because he was mad and he wanted to yell at the refs some more during the challenge. Last thing I have, because you talked about like, the Eagles just winning, and Stats has talked about that, the Eagles just winning, and I've talked about Jalen Hurts just winning. Jalen Hurts is the 5th NFL quarterback since 1950 to win at least 25 games in the span of a 27-game stretch. The other 4, RJ.
I saw this. Can I guess
Tom
them?
Brady.
I think. Okay. I want to guess. Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Jim McMahon, and Norm Van Brocklin.
Joe Montana instead of Norm Van Brocklin, but all the other ones are right. So that's pretty crazy.
My last question for you. I don't need you to agree or whatever on whether or not Dallas played the better game or whether or not Dak was the better quarterback in the game. But you've said before that Dak Prescott doesn't scare you. You don't have to use those words if you don't want. But I have to imagine that this was like, it had to have at least annoyed you how functional Dak Prescott was on offense. So of all the NFC playoff quarterbacks, like in all likelihood, right? The non-Eagles ones, Jared Goff, Brock Purdy, I presume Derek Carr, Geno Smith, Dak Prescott, I guess Josh Dobbs, potentially Sam Howell.
Josh Dobbs kind of scares me. Apparently he doesn't need any time.
I guess Taylor Heinicke, Baker Mayfield. I mean, those are all the quarterbacks for like Dak Prescott. Again, you don't have to use the word scared if you don't want to, but like I have to imagine that like it's not fun for you to go against Dak Prescott. Like he has proven that he can, handle this. I mean, like I have to imagine he's earned a little bit of respect from you.
I think Dak played a great game in a losing effort, and he made a key mistake by not getting obviously over the goal line in the 2-point scenario. Although, I also give some credit there to Brandon Graham. Like Brandon Graham, he hustled over and he forced him like out. Like it wasn't just him, but he still deserves some level of credit there. It wasn't like Dak was like wide open and just randomly stepped out. He was pushed out a little bit. My top concern, and I wrote this, I podcasted about this. My top concern in going into last week's matchup was what? I said it was CeeDee Lamb, because he's going up against a very uninspiring, like it's not even the Eagles' 3rd string cornerback. It's their 3rd string option, which is rotating an undrafted rookie free agent in Eli Ricks, who at any point, I don't know going back to Alabama, I don't know his career that well, but at least in training camp this year, he never repped in the slot. He was in the preseason. He was always on the outside. So you're moving him into the slot, and only really on passing downs because you don't trust him in run defense. So in run defense plays, or where they could conceivably run more so, you have Sidney Brown, who's a rookie safety who's never played at nickel cornerback, lining up in the slot. So the combination of those two going up against CeeDee Lamb, I really don't like that. Now, there's hope for the Eagles in that regard because they should be getting Bradley Roby back after the bye. Even then, that's not like a guy who's like a career slot cornerback as much as he's a guy who can play in there and has some experience in there. I do think he's an upgrade on those two options, which are just totally like non-starters for hopes of being anywhere good. But even so, I'm not saying that's the only reason Dak had success or CD had success. CD went up against Darius Slay at points and won some of those battles.
You're giving credit to all these other people on the poor Cowboys plays. Like you have to give credit to Dak and to CD. Like I mean,
that's what I'm saying. I just said like there were reps where he beat Darius Slay. It wasn't just, but they very much, to their credit, as they should, exploit a very weakened part of the Eagles secondary, which is again because they lost Avonte Maddox, who's not like a Pro Bowler, but is like a good slot cornerback who's often injured. And then they also lost Roby, who was their backup option after trying James Bradbury in there, and that didn't work out. So it is tough to be down to, again, your 3rd string option, and it's 2 rookies who just don't even have any kind of experience at that position.
Last question. Dallas Goedert, what's the exact potential approximate time frame on the injury?
So it's important to note that the bye week does not count towards him returning.
If you're placed on injured reserve, has he been placed on injured reserve?
We'll see. That's we don't know. But if you are, to your point, you have to miss 4 games. It's not 4 weeks, right? 4 games. But the extra time does help him because maybe normally where he might have to miss just 4 games, now that he only has to, now that it's 4 weeks, there's only 3 games in 4 weeks. Maybe you don't have to put him on IR. Maybe they could get him back potentially for that Cowboys game there.
That's why I asked, in case anyone
we don't know
doesn't have
yet.
this. Well, in case anyone doesn't have the schedule in front of them, the Cowboys game is the Eagles' 4th game of their next 4. So if you placed Goddard on injured reserve, he would be out for the Cowboys game.
But the luxury the Eagles have right now is they don't play a game this week, so they can kind of wait and see how maybe things go leading up to the Chiefs game, and then decide, like, okay, yeah, he's going to need that time to be out, or maybe he doesn't. So we don't totally know yet. Nick Sirianni wouldn't say. I'm guessing they will put him on there, but that's just a guess. I don't know. It seems kind of more up in the air in terms of when he can be back. But that's definitely a big loss for the Eagles offense.
That's the latest. Okay, let's take a break and hear a word from our sponsors. Welcome back, Brandon. While we were gone, you told me on a scale of 1 to 10 how sick I sound.
No, I didn't. It's not true. Well, you're very sick for being a Cowboys fan, but
good one. The Washington Commanders won. We both picked the Patriots. We both laid the points.
Did.
And
they almost won.
we looked stupid. Did you know, I'm really asking you this, that Sam Howell is 2nd in the NFL in passing yards? I'm not saying that's like a measurement of success.
I'm not surprised because they've had to pass the ball a lot. So no.
Right.
I'm not like shocked by that.
The Commanders won 20-17, moving themselves further out of contention or consideration for Caleb Williams and Drake May, which is good news for all of us. Montez Sweat, Chase Young, not there, didn't matter. I don't want to take away from the Commanders, and I don't want to not give them credit, but this really just says a lot about how bad the Patriots are to me. But either way, it was an impressive performance overall. Jahan Dotson is he is becoming the new Terry McLaurin, like the new most underrated receiver in the NFC East, at least. He's kind of ripped that mantle or that whatever away from Terry McLaurin. He is so good, but McLaurin is certainly serviceable as well. And there's all this chatter that the Commanders feel like they have found their franchise quarterback.
John Allen saying that Howell's the guy.
I think it was JP Finley. Somebody in the Washington media tweeted out because there was the big USC Washington game on Saturday night. I don't know if you saw this, and obviously it was a big.
No.
Oh, and there was a big take Mageddon happening because I really don't know if you saw this. USC lost, and Caleb Williams went to the crowd and went to see his mom, and was kind of getting consoled by her. And so, as you can imagine, the draft Knicks were out and were like,
soft.
Yeah, you blah blah blah. But anyway, this is before that. I saw again, maybe it was JP Finley, it was somebody else potentially who tweeted something about Caleb Williams, and the responses were like, Sam Howell's better. Okay, believe that if you want. I'm totally fine with that. But this is who the Commanders are. They have enough going on to beat these poor teams, but it keeps them trapped in purgatory.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment. That I think, from my perspective, I went into week 9 with my Eagles rooting guide that I do each week at bleedinggreennation.com. I know you do something similar, blogging the boys. I wanted the Commanders to win this game. I thought that would be the best thing for the Eagles, is the Commanders kind of being stuck in the middle there. Potentially, there's a scenario here where what if the Commanders do get the 7th seed, and I'm guessing they won't stick with Ron Rivera, but what if they do? You know what I mean? What if they accidentally get this false positive and talk themselves into something, or probably less likely him, honestly, than Sam Howell, who, I mean, maybe he's probably better than the backup. I said he was a backup. I think he's looking better than a backup, but I think he's, we've talked about here before here, maybe Ryan Fitzpatrick, some kind of guy who can start for
Ryan
you.
Fitzpatrick, Colt McCoy, Chase Daniel. You know
he's
what I mean?
He's a bridge starter. Yeah. He's a guy who can start for you, but isn't. I mean, honestly, I think his ceiling is that he's Kirk Cousins. I think that's Sam Howell's ceiling. He's
that
this
is
guy.
So disrespectful to Kirk Cousins. Oh my gosh.
But I think that's his ceiling, is a guy who can put up some good numbers, but you're not really truly going to win big. No one's ever going to be truly scared of Sam Howell, except the Eagles, who apparently can't stop him. But yeah, so I think this is kind of false positive material here for the Commanders. There's still a lot of season left. We'll see if Howell hits another gear, then okay, maybe I'm wrong. But for now, I am totally fine with how things are going in terms of the Commanders not being in position for a top quarterback, and also not being actually good enough to really do anything except maybe make the 7 seed.
So as it stands, the Minnesota Vikings hold the 7 seed with the Josh Dobbs win. It's funny how that happens, because that's not technically a Joshua Dobbs credited win. You know what I mean? Because he didn't start the
Right.
game. Like that's always so stupid. But whatever. Anyway, the Vikings are now 5-4 in the 7th seed spot. The Commanders, by virtue of beating the Falcons, have the tiebreaker over them. So they're currently the 8th seed. So it really just kind of depends on how much you believe in the Vikings and how much like they can, duct tape and glue and scratch this thing out to with Joshua Dobbs. But let's play the prediction game with the Commanders. So they're 4-5 at the moment. We've got the Washington football teams matchup this week. I think
I'll say they lose that one, and that's obviously that could be potentially big in terms of tiebreaker.
Right, so that's 4-6. Then they beat the Giants.
Beat
easily.
the Giants.
5-6. We both had them losing to the Cowboys. So that's 5-7. They lose to Miami as well. I think that's 5-8.
They host Miami.
I'm sorry, you're right. Yeah, so 5-8. Then they're on bye. Then after their final 4 games at 5-8, the Rams, the Jets, the Niners, the Cowboys, and
let's
the Cowboys
say they beat the Rams and the Jets.
So that would be 7-8. And say they lose to the Niners, that would be 7-9. But it's highly possible that Dallas is locked into the 5 seed or something like that in that Week 18 game. And it depends on what you think of Minnesota. Once again, Minnesota still has to play. They've got New Orleans, Denver, Chicago, goodness, Vegas, but they got to play Cincinnati, and they still have to play Detroit twice. The Vikings do. So, it's possible. And look, wouldn't it be hilarious? But you've said maybe the Eagles are afraid of Sam Howell. If the Lions do surpass the Eagles for the 1 seed and the 7 seed Commanders visit the 2 seed Eagles in the wild card round, that'd be funny.
I'll still sign up. I know it hasn't been stress free, but I would still sign up for that. I would.
Of course. With that. I'm joking around, but that'd be funny. But no, I don't know. They're trapped right now. I don't know how you can feel good about things if you're a Commanders fan. It's a weird purgatory right now.
I'll try to. I don't enjoy doing this, but I'll try to be fair and spin the case for optimism. Again, maybe Howell hits another gear here. Maybe he is clicking as the season goes along.
Sure.
Maybe the fact that something I don't really fully believe in that as much as what I'm about to say. The fact that you do have new ownership, they're gonna want to make their impact on the team, as opposed to if they just had Snyder, there's more of a chance they just run it back or whatever. But the fact that there's a new ownership here, they're gonna want to do something splashy and make headlines. And also, if I'm not mistaken, I was looking at 2024 cap space. The Commanders have the first or second most cap space in the NFL. So they could really go all out this offseason. They could make a big. They have these draft picks now too from the Chase Young and the Sweat trades where they could get aggressive trading up.
Yeah, they could be cute. I'm with you.
They could get aggressive trading for. There's not a quarterback that's coming to mind at the top of my head. What if Kirk goes back to Washington? What if Kirk goes back to Washington?
I've brought that up before. Kyler Murray is I think a trade candidate.
Well, that wouldn't scare me.
I'm just saying maybe Justin Fields is on the trade block.
Okay, well that's
you asked for names. Maybe Jordan Love. You know what I think those are the names to talk about. But those are lateral moves from Sam Howell, at this point. So no,
all right, my point there was they're gonna. I think Commanders will have an active offseason. They're gonna do things that they're gonna take big swings, and big swings might end up in striking out, but you also might be able to hit a home run.
Yeah, I do think it's notable when you can trade away talented players and get a nice win, morale's at least high. And we've said it, they're in a much better place overall. This was always going to take time, and you have to just at this point be willing to be patient a little bit longer. So that's where the Commanders are at. That takes us to the toughest of tough scenes. This game.
But it's a good thing. It has the potential to be a good thing ultimately for the Giants.
This game was happening in parallel with the Cowboys-Eagles game, so nobody saw it. But the New York Giants got humiliated by the Antonio Pierce-led Las Vegas Raiders. Former Giant Antonio Pierce. It was 30-6 the final score. The Giants fall to 2-7. It was reported and then confirmed on Monday that Daniel Jones tore his ACL. His season is over. It's just gone from bad to worse for the Giants. Everybody, Brandon, obviously was picking on the Jets on Monday night, and Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas for not bringing in an alternative option.
Saying Zach Wilson. Rodgers went down.
So I agree with you, but I saw this tweet while we were recording, so I've got it here from Rich Cimini, who covers the Jets, obviously for ESPN. Fewest offensive touchdowns through 8 games over the last 5 seasons. The 2020 Jets with 7. The 2023 Jets with 8. The 2023 Giants with 8. And the 2019 Jets with
New York
8.
football is back, baby.
It goes with the Peter King stat that we've referenced many times, which I don't think is accurate anymore, but from 2017 through 2021, the New York teams were the most losingest in the NFL, and they're way, but like
they're Jets, aesthetically the worst teams in the NFL in that time period.
But the Jets, you can kind of feel a little bit bad for right now. The Giants, this is like, dude, to lose to an
no, we can't feel bad for them because they had a chance to do something and they literally did nothing.
So again, now some of this is like the vibe shift for the Raiders and firing Josh McDaniels and Antonio Pierce. Obviously was a big boost for the Raiders, but to lose to Aiden O'Connell in his first start is just a tough scene for the Giants. And now you're without Daniel Jones. Tyrod Taylor is on IR.
He might not be back this year.
Yeah, Darren Waller is on IR. So it's the Tommy DeVito show for the time being. Man. I mean, like, dude, what is the redeeming quality of the Giants right now?
Yeah, like, why are you watching? What are you watching the games for?
I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau has, I think, like 8.5 sacks. Okay. That's it. Like, that's all you got going on for you right now if you're a Giants fan.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say him, but like, how much of that is just like good player on a bad team? You know, like someone has to get sacked, someone has to get production. I don't know. I haven't seen the Giants close enough lately to see him play a ton. But I mean, just looking at their schedule to finish out the year, I mean,
so they could beat. So they're at Dallas.
They might lose out.
So okay, they're 2-7. Find me the third. Tell me where the third win is. At Dallas, yes or no? No. At Washington, no. New England, maybe.
I'm gonna say no.
Then the bye, Green Bay.
Maybe the bye coming off. The Packers are they've been pretty bad. It's possible.
At New Orleans,
no.
At Philly, no. The Rams, maybe. I mean,
that's possible. I think either the Packers or the Rams. I think that's one. You're looking at one of those.
So the ceiling is 4 wins, 4 or 5 wins at the absolute most.
And honestly, I think they're just going to lose out unless there's a scenario potentially where the Eagles have it wrapped up by week 18 and they play all of their. What if the Eagles backups beat the Giants? That would be so sad. It'd be great for the Giants fans, and everything. But that would be a very infuriating end to this season if you're the Giants. What if the Eagles have everything locked up by week 18? The Giants need to lose that game to get the number 1 overall pick. The Eagles
it's a Texans, Colts, Bears situation from last year. Yeah,
the Giants win. That'd be awful.
I'm so happy that an O'Connell is the person who embarrassed the Giants because it remains hilarious that Kevin O'Connell got 0 consideration for Coach of the Year last year, and that everybody just handed it to Brian Daboll. I mean, look at what Kevin O'Connell's doing this year.
Sure.
Like compared to what Brian Daboll's doing. Like there's no question that Kevin O'Connell is a head and shoulders better coach than Brian Daboll. And everybody fell so in love with the Daboll Giants storyline.
He also lost to Brian Daboll, unfortunately, twice.
I mean, so what? The Eagles lost to Joe Judge once. I mean, you know what I mean? Like we don't have to do that.
It was in the playoffs. It was and it was a home playoff game. That's a big difference there.
All I'm saying is like
it's not like a trap game.
People acted like it was a slam dunk to give Brian Daboll the Coach of the Year over Kevin O'Connell when Kevin O'Connell is clearly a better coach.
I mean,
this
Sirianni also beat Kevin O'Connell.
This isn't just Daniel Jones is bad, Daniel Jones is hurt, the offensive line, Darren Waller. Brian Daboll needs to have his feet held to the fire here. Like you cannot be the coach that people hype you up to be and be this consistently bad.
100%, and I think he's getting cover, at least based on some of the tone of the Giants coverage I've seen, including from our friend Ed Valentine at Big Blue View. I disagree with Ed. Ed thinks they need, to keep these guys.
You showed me this. Reference it, please. Tell everybody where to find it.
It's an article on bigblueview.com, and basically, I forget the title, but it's here it is.
I think it's things I think. Yeah.
As bad as things are for the Giants, they can't fire Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen. That's wrong. I don't think they necessarily have to. Like, I think I'm more willing to hear that, but you can't say they can't do it. Like, it's just zero chance they should do it. No, that's just wrong. Brian Daboll has been really bad this year. Now, I'm not saying like he should have them in the playoffs. Obviously not. They've had so many things go wrong for them. But you can't tell me with what limited he has had, he's done the most with that. No, he has not maximized this team. They should have been able to steal that win in Buffalo. Now, obviously, what does that mean in the bigger picture? I don't know. But point being, like, I don't think you can say Daboll's doing a good job. Obviously, Joe Shane, the Leonard Williams trade was very good. But in terms of the draft, maybe there's just been some bad luck there. But, Evan Neal hasn't worked out. Thibodeau seems promising, but kind of a TBD. The Waller trade was hilariously bad for many reasons. Because, again, we've talked about it before. Like, even if it worked out, it didn't seem like fit their timeline. And it wasn't a good bet to make on a player who hadn't really been effective since a couple seasons ago. So I can see sticking with Shane more than I can see with sticking with Daboll.
So you didn't mention this, but Ed's kind of basic premise, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm paraphrasing, was that you can't make a change because you've made too many changes, like in recent history.
That's a sunk cost fallacy.
Right, but that was like the argument he laid out was that the Giants had moved on from Joe Judge and Pat Shurmur and
okay, then
Dave
let's apply that to the quarterback position.
Right, and that's all I'm saying. But like I'm agreeing with you. I'm just contextualizing it more. Ed was saying like you moved on from each of those like windows after 2 years. You have to give this one longer than 2 years to kind of prove itself.
No,
I'm agreeing with you, but like I'm just laying out his logic.
Daboll has been McAdoo, and we've been saying I've been saying that like all season long, or asking that he's McAdoo. He had that one good year. I don't know. It was kind of fluky, and now it's not the same thing.
I don't know that I subscribe to that the Giants have to move on from either one yet. I'm certainly, as the days go, getting closer there. But I definitely disagree with the idea that like you can't move on just because you moved on from other eras after short windows in the past. Like that's silly to me.
Agree. Right. I'm not saying you definitely have to 100% fire Daboll now or at the end of the season, but you can't. It has to be discussed, and also, it's relative too, right? I'm not saying fire him blindly than to hire just someone else. You should evaluate him against the other candidates that are potentially out there. If you see a potential upgrade, then you should make the move.
I've joked about this, but like I've said it before, like that's the dominoes are falling, like they really are, like right, like Robert Kraft.
I don't think that's the right move for them though.
Robert Kraft is like kind of sick of the Patriots losing. How can you not be, right? Like you're on year 4 of post Tom Brady, and like it hasn't turned itself around. Like, and
the Patriots should move on from him, to be clear.
Right. Like, well, he doesn't match their timeline either, like with his chasing Don Shula's record. And so like, is there a team that Bill Belichick would love to get that record with more than the New York Giants? You know what I mean? Like for him to go home, you know what I mean? Like a place he reveres, you know what I mean? Blah, 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 blah.
They would have to trade for him probably, which I would not do.
But he would give them the like credibility that they don't have. Like I recognize his credibility has taken a bit of a hit. But like I'm not the first person to suggest or intimate this like super low hanging fruit idea, but like it makes sense. I think like it makes sense in terms of happening in the offseason. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think this might work out for the Giants because if they do lose out and they do get the number 1 overall pick or even number 2, they have to get a quarterback now, basically. Like the Daniel Jones injury, I feel sorry for Daniel Jones. That's unfortunate for him. But this is like great for the Giants in terms of forcing their hand because like they have to now. They literally have to because he might not even be able to play next year, or at least, early in the season, depending on how long it takes for him to recover. And beyond that, like his contract, they can move on from him after next season. They're stuck with him for 2024, but whatever. Who cares? That's just 1 year. And you're going to have a rookie in here anyway, and then you can move on from him after 2024.
So I'm curious about something. I'm looking something up. Buy me 10 more seconds. You can do this.
What are you looking up?
It's about an ACL thing because obviously
the timeline.
So Kyler Murray, who was also taken in the 2019 NFL draft, is going to, in all likelihood, return this week from a torn ACL. He tore his ACL last year,
time, right? Or was it later?
No, it was. That's what I was checking. It was on December 12th when he tore it. So I mean, it's called 11 months. So to your point, Daniel Jones is maybe returning in October of next year. And maybe it happens earlier than that. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's an injury where some people are able to come back faster. But like to your point, you can't just like if you're the Giants, you cannot be like, oh, we'll just find,
we'll run it back.
Tyrod Taylor, Carson Wentz, you know what I mean? Like whatever, like level backup to kind of hold down the fort for a month until Daniel Jones comes back. So you're right. It might have forced the acceleration of their consideration of moving on for a different quarterback. So we'll see how that works out. Are you ready to offer some early picks for
I do think they will not move on from Dable and Shane, by the way. I don't think they will. We can talk about should, but I do think because I think it's about flipping one switch or flipping one lever, and I think quarterback is going to be that lever.
I think that's fair. By the way, before we offer our picks, Brandon will not be on TGI Football this week, and neither will Steven Serta, if anybody listens to those shows. So we should congratulate
our host.
Well, we should congratulate on Twitter. We should congratulate ourselves now, Brandon, because for the first time ever, our same game parlay hit last week on TGI Football
before halftime.
We based it around the Cowboys-Eagles game. You took the over on CeeDee Lamb. It was like 73.5 receiving yards. Steven took over on Jake Ferguson. I think it was like 61.5. And I took the Cowboys on the race to 10 points. All three hit in the first half. So congratulations to us.
And I think you won like $60 if you put a $10 wager on that. So
seriously, think about how much brothy soup you could buy with that. Okay, the Eagles are on bye, and we only have 2 games to get to this week because the Cowboys and Giants play one another. You mentioned it. The Cowboys spread has grown to 16 points that they are laying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care. That spread could be anything. I'm taking. Why would you? What is there to believe in with the Giants? What are you banking on? The Cowboys have literally shown they can dominate inferior teams. And they're also coming off of this loss. They're going to be angry, motivated, whatever.
I was just going to add, they also have an 11-game winning streak at home, the largest in the NFL. There's
zero reason to take, other than it's football and weird things can happen out of nowhere.
Okay, so we're both laying 16 points on the Cowboys to beat the Giants. Finally, the Washington football teams, the Commanders heading out west. They are getting 6 points to face the Seahawks. I tweeted this out, by the way, on Sunday night. I tweeted that there were 3 teams who had a real chance to kind of prove themselves on Sunday, and they all failed to do so. The Dolphins against the Chiefs in Germany, the Cowboys against the Eagles in Philly, and the Bills against the Bengals in Cincinnati. But somebody tweeted back at me, was like, you could add the Seahawks to that mix. The Seahawks had a huge chance to make a statement against the Ravens. And similarly, you should be giving the Ravens a lot of love.
Amazing regular season team
for destroying them. But Seahawks kind of in a similar spot in terms of needing to rebound after an embarrassing loss.
Yeah, but I think they'll be able to do that here against the Commanders. I question them against the better teams, but I don't think the Commanders are in that class, and I think the Seahawks will. I mean, the Commanders might cover. I could see them making it a game, but I will actually lean with the Seahawks bouncing back and being able to cover in a win.
I think I'm going to lay the points. I'm going to take the Seahawks. I trust them, so I'm good to go there. Okay,
the time has come to add for the Commanders if they could get it.
The time has come for songs. Rachel. Rachel was a bit tardy this week. I'm gonna call her out. We had to remind Rachel, although we didn't tell her when we were recording, so maybe that's our fault. But she did get a song turned in nonetheless. She has gone with "So Ambitious" by Pharrell and Jay-Z. I am going to go. I'm going to associate my song with my own health and with where I think the Cowboys are at. I'm going to go with "One Step at a Time" by Jordan Sparks. It's a great little intro, like great little melody to start. I'm just going to take this one step at a time, nice and slow.
Okay. I thought Rachel's pick was amusing because I happen to have picked a song where an artist from her song is also an artist in my song, but it's not by Pharrell, to be clear. It's a feature by Pharrell. Okay. And it's from the great album Random Access Memories. It is Daft Punk's Get Lucky, because just up all night to get lucky over here.
That was a great album. A lot of people remember that song the most. I really liked the song. I think it was called "Lose Yourself to Dance."
Also,
it was on that album.
A banger. It's a great album, like you said. It's on the there's really no skips on that. It's from front to back, very strong. But yeah.
Cool. Then let's chunk deuces as we do.
That's not the best terminology when you're not feeling well, I feel like.
Yeah, I know. I'm not feeling nauseous. I just have a sore throat. Brandon, you are not going to be here in all
I
likelihood
don't think you
next
can feel
week.
nauseous. I think you can only be nauseous. You can feel nausea. Wait, is that right?
You would feel nausea. That's what you would feel.
You would feel nauseated. You're nauseous is a state of being. So I am not. I am nauseous. I can't feel nauseous.
I'm not any of those things, though, to be clear, like that. So chunking deuces is not like something I'm concerned with.
You're not nauseated.
You are in all likelihood not going to be here next week. So tell us something cool.
Tell us who you want to be on the podcast. At RJ Ochoa, at Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon's making me work really hard over the course of the next like 10 days.
Well, it's the Eagles bye week.
I mean, I'm just saying,
taking a break.
I was here when the Cowboys were on their bye.
This season has been kicking my butt. If we're just being honest, no one needs to feel bad for me because obviously that would be very silly. But with all these the Eagles have 3 1:00 games this year, maybe 4, I guess, with Week 18 potentially. But like every game is a night game,
dude.
And it's just tough. It's tough.
I'm not trying to complain about this either. But we were all excited because last week they both had 1:00 games. The Cowboys played the Rams in the early slate, and my internet went out right after the game ended.
I saw that.
So like it was just like I couldn't even everything I wanted to do got delayed. So like I didn't even have a chance to like enjoy that. It was terrible. But since you're not going to be here next week, tell us something that you have in your fridge right now that will still be there when you're on the next episode of the NFC's Mixtape.
Yeah, my fridge is kind of empty. I need to do some grocery shopping. So not a whole lot right now. Pickles.